Around 2.5 million years ago, East Africa was a semi-arid ecological zone, consisting of savannas, low shrubs, sparse forests, and seasonal streambeds. The climate was unstable, and vegetation shifted rapidly. In this landscape, a new hominin species emerged, called Homo habilis. Biologically, Homo habilis was a transitional form. Its brain case was smaller than modern humans, measuring around 500 to 700 centimeters cubic. It stood upright, though not fully stable. Its arms remained long like its arboreal ancestors, but the hands had improved grip precision, crucial for tool use. Its most defining trait wasn't physical, it was behavioral. Homo habilis was the first species in the genus Homo with deliberate evidence of stone tool use. Not just accidentally broken rocks, but carefully selected and strategically struck stones to create sharp edges for cutting meat, cracking bones, and processing plants. The environment was hostile. Predators like prehistoric hyenas, leopards, and Nile crocodiles posed constant threats. Homo habilis had no claws, fangs, or speed. Its survival relied on two things: mobility and adaptive thinking. Archaeological evidence at sites like Duvi Gorge, Tanzania, reveals that Homo habilis lived in small groups, migrated seasonally, and often scavenged carcasses for meat and marrow. Stone tools allowed more efficient nutrient extraction and reduced dependence on brute strength or teeth. The real turning point wasn't just survival, it was deliberate interaction with the environment through thought. With the simple act of striking stones, Homo habilis launched a new evolutionary direction. Humans would no longer merely adapt to nature, but begin reshaping it. That was the official dawn of human history. Part 2. Half human, half beast. In form, Homo habilis was a mixture of primitive and modern features. Its average height was under 1.5 meters, body weight between 30 to 40 kilograms. It walked on two legs, though pelvic and leg bones show the gait was not yet as stable as in modern humans. Its arms were longer relative to legs, a leftover from tree-dwelling ancestors. Wrists were flexible, and hands had precision grip, ideal for manipulating tools. Its body hair may have remained thick, helping it adapt to rapidly shifting climates and cold nights. The skull displayed key transitional features. Brain volume averaged 600 to 700 centimeters cubed, larger than Australopithecus, number 400 to 500 centimeters cubed, yet smaller than Homo erectus. It had a sloping forehead, receding chin, large molars, and a low, elongated cranium, clear signs of a species still evolving. However, the central nervous system held the key difference. Based on proportions of cerebral cortex regions, scientists believe Homo habilis had superior memory, analysis, and flexible responses compared to its predecessors. Behaviorally, it led a semi-terrestrial life, foraging and using tools on the ground by day, but still sleeping in trees at night for predator safety. It existed between two worlds, the dangerous open plains and the memory of forest canopies. In evolutionary terms, Homo habilis was the bridge between Australopithecus and later Homo species. No longer an ape, but not yet fully human. It was the biological intersection, marking the shift from instinct-driven survival to behavior guided by rudimentary reasoning. Art 3. Out of the forest. The origins of Homo habilis. The emergence of Homo habilis was a direct result of major environmental shifts in the late Pliocene and early Pleistocene epochs, over 2.5 million years ago. The global climate cooled and dried, causing a retreat of African rainforests and the spread of savannas and woodlands. Previously, the ancestors of Homo habilis were species like Australopithecus afarensis, exemplified by Lucy, who lived around 3.2 million years ago. Australopithecus could walk on two legs, but remained reliant on arboreal life, eating fruits, leaves, and moving nimbly through forest layers. As forests retreated and grasslands expanded, Selective pressures forced some hominin populations to alter survival strategies. Those who dared to descend, adapt to terrestrial life, and exploit new resources laid the foundation for the genus Homo. Initially, evolutionary theories assumed a direct leap from Australopithecus to Homo erectus, but the discovery of Homo habilis fossils filled this gap. It was the first Homo species with a larger brain, 600 to 700 centimeters cubed, hands adapted for fine manipulation, and most notably, clear evidence of stone tool use. The rise of Homo habilis wasn't random evolutionary luck. It was a result of environmental pressures and behavioral adaptation. It marked the transition from purely biological adaptation to cultural adaptation, where survival began to depend on thought and intention rather than just physical traits. Part 4. Old Duvi Gorge, where truth emerged. In 1960, a discovery in Tanzania's Old Duvi Gorge reshaped our understanding of human origins. Under the guidance of Mary and Louis Leakey, the team unearthed a fossilized jawbone, not from a modern ape, yet not fully human. Soon after, more fossils were recovered: a skull with 680 centimeters cubic brain volume, flexible hand bones, long straight leg bones, indicating an established bipedal gait. But the key revelation wasn't in the bones, it was in the stones scattered nearby. These weren't naturally fractured rocks. Their worn surfaces and sharp edges showed intentional shaping, selected for specific purposes. Analysis identified them as Oldowan tools, the oldest known human-crafted technology. These tools were suitable for cutting meat, splitting bones, and butchering animals. Most importantly, they were not nature's work. They were created by minds. The Olduvai discovery transformed Homo habilis from a vague concept into the first strong candidate for toolmaker. Scientifically, it proved that before writing, art, or speech, our ancestors were already engaging in technological thought. From Olduvai Gorge, humanity stepped beyond biology into a world shaped by intelligence. A world where tools became extensions of the mind. Part 5. The First Stone, Birth of Intelligence. About 2.5 million years ago, Homo habilis performed an unprecedented act in Earth's history, intentionally selecting and altering raw materials to serve survival needs. On East Africa's basalt and limestone outcrops, Homo habilis picked stones based on shape and hardness, using one as an anvil, the other as a hammer. By striking, they created flakes with sharp edges. These flakes weren't random, they were purposeful creations. This was the beginning of the Oldowan industry, the oldest known stone tool tradition. Oldowan tools included choppers, unifacial cutting stones, flakes, and hammerstones. Each had a function: slicing meat, stripping hides, extracting marrow, breaking open roots and nuts. Unlike animals that use natural objects by chance, e.g. chimps using sticks to fish for termites, Homo habilis followed a process: select, manipulate, use, learn. This marked the shift from instinct to intentional thinking. Oldowan tools were crude but revolutionary. They enabled a new form of adaptation: intervention through cognition. With tools, Homo habilis no longer relied solely on teeth, nails, or strength. They expanded survival capacity using external materials. In evolutionary terms, this was monumental. Intelligence began expressing itself physically through tools. It laid the foundation for fire-making, shelters, collective hunts, and eventually, language and culture. Homo habilis wasn't the first with a large brain, but they were the first to prove they were thinking by the very stones they held. Part 6. Life between two worlds. Homo habilis didn't build villages, have permanent shelters, or formal laws, but they showed signs of early social organization. Archaeological data suggests that groups may have consisted of 20 to 80 individuals, comparable to troop sizes of modern chimpanzees and baboons. In the semi-arid savannas of East Africa, foraging took place mainly during the day. They gathered wild fruits, roots, and animal remains, and likely shared food within the group, a practice that increased survival efficiency and reduced individual risk. At night, Homo habilis returned to trees to rest as protection against predators. Bipedalism helped them access ground-based resources, but climbing remained vital. This dual strategy reveals behavioral amphibiousness, living between the future of the ground and the past of the canopy. A key piece of evidence is the presence of deliberately arranged circular stone structures. These low stone rings, rarely exceeding knee height, were found near temporary camps. Though not dwellings in the modern sense, they reflect a new idea: spatial recognition, activity zones, and boundaries for shelter. This marked an important shift from constant seasonal migration to temporarily occupying space. Behaviorally, this shows early signs of territorial awareness, spatial control, and the seeds of future architecture. Homo habilis didn't build permanent homes, but through early spatial organization, they began shaping the relationship between humans and habitat, not just residing, but residing with intent. Part 7. When humans were the prey. Homo habilis wasn't at the top of the food chain. On the contrary, in the East African ecosystems of 2 to 2.5 million years ago, they were among the most vulnerable animals. They had no claws or fangs. They lacked superior speed. They had no natural defense mechanisms. Small-bodied and ground-dwelling, they lived under constant threat from ancient predators. Threats included leopards, prehistoric hyenas, Nile crocodiles, and saber-toothed cats. Each had effective hunting strategies: tree climbing, pack coordination, ambush from water, or rapid attack speed. A lone Homo habilis caught off guard, drinking water, or separated from its group could die instantly. There were no rescue systems, no medicine, no public health. Even a small wound could mean infection and death. Young adult mortality, especially among males, was likely high. Under such conditions, Homo habilis developed proactive defense instincts. They learned to recognize subtle changes in wind, the smell of decay from afar, and fresh tracks in dry sand. Though simple, these skills were critical to survival. Their danger detection evolved beyond pure reflex. It began to include observation, memory, and prediction, early signs of cognitive vigilance. In evolutionary terms, Homo habilis exemplifies a species that survived not through strength, but cognitive adaptation. They weren't hunters, but clever enough not to be hunted. The evolution of human intelligence did not begin with conquest. It began with the struggle to survive in a world full of biological threats. Part 8. A cognitive race among human species. Between 2.5 and 1.5 million years ago, Homo habilis wasn't the only human species. Several other members of the genus Homo coexisted. Homo rudolfensis, with a larger brain, Homo ergaster, with a taller, more mobile body, and notably Homo erectus, known for social coordination and superior hunting skills. There's no clear evidence of direct conflict between these species, but biological competition was inevitable. In environments with limited resources, water, food, shelter, and safe foraging zones, species either adapted quickly or were replaced. In that competition, Homo habilis faced clear disadvantages: smaller bodies, simpler tools, less structured societies, and limited mobility. They mainly relied on scavenging, while Homo erectus adopted active hunting, used advanced tools, and migrated farther to expand their range. Archaeological data show that Homo habilis traces declined over time in shared regions, while remains of Homo erectus and later humans became more common. This supports the idea of a nonviolent but uncompromising evolutionary replacement. Evolution doesn't work in a single generation. It's a process over thousands of years where even small behavioral improvements can accumulate survival advantages. Homo habilis wasn't destroyed, but fell behind in a rapidly accelerating race. In the ancient world, survival wasn't decided by absolute power, but by behavioral efficiency and learning speed. Homo habilis was left behind not because they were weak, but because others advanced faster. Part 9. The Silent End. The extinction of Homo habilis wasn't tied to catastrophe. There were no volcanoes, asteroids, or pandemics. They weren't wiped out. They simply faded. Around 1.5 million years ago, East Africa underwent major climate shifts. Rainfall declined, moist forests shrank. The savanna became drier and more unpredictable. Water was limited to seasonal streams. Changing vegetation led to the decline of large herbivores, an indirect food source for Homo habilis. In contrast, other human species like Homo erectus, better adapted for long-distance travel, dry heat, and advanced tools, gained advantage. They reached new lands, coordinated in groups more effectively, and exploited resources more efficiently. There's no archaeological evidence that Homo habilis was hunted or exterminated by others. Instead, their disappearance follows a gradual population decline, a natural selection process unfolding as they failed to keep pace with a changing world. Their extinction illustrates a core evolutionary principle. The fittest aren't the strongest, but the most adaptable. Homo habilis didn't suffer a dramatic end. They were silently replaced when their evolutionary role was complete. Part 10. The Legacy of the First Dreamers. Homo habilis left no writing, architecture, or art, no religious systems, no written language, no myths. Yet they left an irreversible mark on human evolution, the ability to look at a lifeless object and see its potential. Stone toolmaking wasn't just survival. It was the earliest expression of abstract thought and intentional action. Homo habilis didn't merely react to nature, they shaped it to meet their needs. This was the first step from passive adaptation to active creation. Their most important legacy isn't in their fossilized bones, but in their way of thinking. From the first deliberately struck stone, a chain of progress began. Tools, fire, language, memory, social order, culture, and science. Homo habilis wasn't the pinnacle. They were the starting point, and that makes them an indispensable link in our evolutionary timeline. We, Homo sapiens, are not just biological descendants, but behavioral inheritors. Every modern technology, from the phone in your hand to satellites in space, originates from one foundational principle: turning matter into tool through thought. That principle began with Homo habilis. The question today isn't what they left behind. It's what we, heirs to their intelligence, will leave behind. Legacy isn't just what's recorded. It's the chain of thinking passed down through every tool, every decision, every human act.